We're back here with Bob Gerould joining us from hoopobsession.com. This is Kris and Co. Bob, want to get your thoughts on what the Kings should do at 24. And a name that Kris and I have talked about is Kris Murray, but you're obviously a big fan of him. You have him at 10. So on your big board, Kings wouldn't even have a chance to get him at 24.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's going to be there. I like him. I really do. I think he's he's a left-handed shooter. That's the first thing that people would notice as a difference between he and Keegan. Other than that, maybe not the as accurate an outside shooter as Keegan is, but he also, I think, is a little bit lighter on his feet than Keegan is. And so, if you watched Kris Murray this year at Iowa, you could see, I mean, he can score in the post. He can score on the wing. He could take slower forwards off the bounce. He's a great cutter, which I think would really pair well with Sabonis and the way he hits people. So, I'm a fan of Kris Murray. I think he is a little bit underrated in this draft.
Monty seems to have an appreciation, we'll say, for more veteran rookies or older rookies, I guess. And he's gone with that with Davion and Tyrese. And who do you feel like are some of your favorite older prospects in this draft? Obviously, Kris being one of them.
Older prospects in the draft. I'm a guy who is real curious about a couple guys. Oscar Tshiebwe, which I think, I think he's a second round target. I've watched, like I said, a lot of basketball in my life, and he is in the top. He's got to be in the top 1 or 2% of all the rebounders I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I don't throw around the term suction cups for hands. After you watch Chris Webber play for a long time, you get to appreciate what really good hands are. And Tshiebwe has good hands. Now, he's not the scorer Chris Webber is, or he's not the player that Chris Webber is, but as far as just a rebounder, a guy with a nose for the ball, he makes a lot of sense. And that, of course, was a need for the Kings at a bunch of different times this year. I think he'd be an upgrade at the backup center position, even though he's small. I think he'd be an upgrade. So I like Oscar a lot. I just think he has a motor that won't quit. I think he's a good guy. I think he'd fit in, from a chemistry standpoint. So definitely someone I would target in the second round, should he be there. I'm also real curious to see what Zach Edey does out of Purdue, whether or not he goes back to school yet. There's a possibility he could return to Purdue. But if he stays in the draft, he's just so massive, and I think he can do, if you watched Alex Lynn play college ball, or you watched Cato play college ball, and then you watched Zach Edey play college ball, it's not even close. He's a better player. So whether or not he can slide his feet enough and stay on the court defensively certainly would be the issue. But he played with freshman guards there at Purdue. And I think if you pair him with guys that are, NBA caliber shooters and players, I think he looks a little bit better in the NBA game. And then, in the half court offense, he's just a man mountain. He's going to gobble defensive rebounds. He clogs up the lane. He can block shots a little bit. So I'm curious to see what Zach Edey is gonna look like, as a professional.
Bob Gerould joining us, hoopobsession.com. Bob, with the Kings picking 24th, 2 second rounders at 38 and 54, is this draft have the kind of depth that Monty and Wes and that front office can get a potential future starter, rotational guys? Like between those 3 picks, how's the depth of this draft?
I think it's decent. And I think, the 24th isn't that bad because inevitably, as we see it every year, guys are going to swing and miss taking a chance on freshmen who they think they can save. There's a lot of Captain Save-A prospect in the NBA. You know what I mean? There really is. Everyone thinks they look at a guy and, Siku Domboya. You want to, go back to some of those names, and everyone thinks they can save these guys. They look at the ball of clay and think, hey, we can mold that. We can teach him. But at some point, you got to be able to play basketball, and it's a 5-man, game, not a 1-man game. So I hear a lot of people, they want to take a shot on Imoni Bates or someone like that, at 24. And I just think those guys are a long way away. I think if it was a one-on-one contest, sure, let's take Imoni Bates. But at 24, Another senior that I failed to mention, actually, he would be first on my list ahead of Shwebue and Zach Edey, is Trace Jackson Davis from Indiana. I just really think he doesn't shoot the three at all. At least he didn't in college, but he can play. He definitely can play. He can definitely score down on the box. So he's someone who would interest me. At 24, I think there's a chance that a guy like Noah Clowney could slide down to that position. Maybe just a tick under right now on his perimeter shooting, and so he'd have to improve that. But he's a guy with a high ceiling, someone who, if you look at his highlights, he definitely fits the suit. 6'9" with room to grow, can play on the perimeter, no problem, sliding and guarding perimeter players, but also can provide a little bit of a presence inside. So I like Noah Clowney. Tristan Vukcevic, who is a European center, I think he's someone who maybe deserves some consideration there. Or maybe you go for one of those freshmen with high upside, like a Dark Whitehead from Duke, who showed that he could really shoot the ball. Had some issues as far as injuries getting into the fold with Duke early in the season, had to play catch up a little bit. So his numbers probably aren't as good as maybe they can be. But I think he's someone that when you look at him, you just think, here's a McDonald's All-American kid who was really hyped, went to Duke, maybe underperformed a little bit. But again, I think he's a prospect that has a high ceiling and some ways to go.
Let's go to fantasy land for a second, Bob.
Sure.
If picks, let's say the Kings had the first pick or whatever, just had their pick of the prospects, who would be your dream prospect for the Kings to have from this draft class?
Well, I'll take Victor. I mean,
sure. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So you made that one a little bit.
Maybe we take Victor off the board. Victor, okay. We'll take the first 2 or 3 guys off or we'll take Scoot and Victor off the board. How about that?
Catching me here. I think Brandon Miller, would be a good one. I like Jarris Walker an awful lot out of Houston. I just like his toughness. I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to improve a team defensively. 6'8", 240 pounds, and has the ability. I mean, he's so nimble. He has a couple of highlights too, where you see he's full speed on the break, and there's a guy setting up that's going to take a charge for him, and he does a reverse dribble and spins around him somehow and avoids the charge at like 6'8", 240. It was one of those aha moments for me during the season where I was just like, whoa, this dude. That's something you just don't see every day from a guy 6'8", 240. So I'd be a fan of Jarris Walker, definitely.
Bob, you watch this team too. Speaking of the Sacramento Kings all the time, you know them very well. If you're kind of going that fantasy land as well, the off season for the Kings. So we'll kind of include the draft to free agency to some additions. What would you like to see the Kings do to, this last season was great, but to take that next jump?
I think Sasha Vezenkov, if he comes, I think he's going to really, really help the Kings. To me, that's where they need some help at that forward spot, 3-4. I think, Fox, you're looking good. Herder and Monk, I'd like to see a way to get Monk on the floor for more minutes. He was a great 6-man, and so maybe you don't want to mess with that at all. And you'd be a little bit small, obviously, if it was just Fox and Monk, as your 1 and 2. But you got to find a way to get Monk more minutes because he's too good. He was one of the plus defenders on the team. And obviously, he can really score. So I like both of those guys. I mean, you're solid with Sabonis. Keegan, you hope steps up and has continued growth and makes some improvement. But I think you need another 3 or 4, someone who can play a hybrid, like a good pro who's been in the league, who can fit in from a chemistry standpoint. I think you need another point guard that shoots it well. I love Davion and his defense, but I'd like to have the option instead of it just being Davion every time off the bench for Fox. I wouldn't mind having the option of having someone there who can come in and provide some more offense. Now, Davion, if you watch him at Baylor, he really progressed from his freshman year to his junior year when he started to shoot the ball a lot better. And so maybe you see that kind of progression from him as an NBA player too. So, you can't deny what he's able to do defensively. And I think you guys referenced this earlier in Game 7 when Steph went nutso. Davion didn't play as much in that game, and it showed. So, but then at the same time, Davion did play a lot, and Steph still went nutso. So, you know what I mean? So it's like, how much are you really gaining? You got to have somebody who can make some more perimeter shots with more consistency, I think, from that point guard spot.
Well, the site is hoopobsession.com. I think the latest version is 7.0 of your big board. I know there's more to come on that. Bob, we'll definitely have to have you on again as we get closer to the draft. Thank you so much, and I know we'll be talking soon.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys. And yeah, I'm adding stuff just about every day as far as a quick read player profile. So if you need to know something about a player, I can get you in and out of there in a couple of minutes with just a click.
There you go. Perfect. It's hoopobsession.com. He's Bob Gerould. We are back with more great insight there from Bob. We appreciate that as we continue with more Kris and Co. right here on Sactown Sports.